Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCGO codes, make sure you go ahead and check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your order using the code OmniPoke. And also keep an eye out for the 28th of March at 8 AM CST. I'm going to be live streaming a Streamer Showdown that we're having with myself and a few of the other content creators out there who are also involved in the Potown store, including Tablemon, Zapdos TCG, Celio's Network, and a bunch of other guys. So it should be a lot of fun for sure. Hopefully I go far in the tournament, but we'll see how it goes. For today's video, I'm going to be analysing the top 8 decks from the Perth Regional Championships, as well as the top 4 decks from the SPE in Guatemala. Now, these are two sub-100 player tournaments, so you can take these results with a pinch of salt if you want to, but do bear in mind, for some instances, for example in Perth, there are basically like a star-studded League Cup, the way you have to think about it. There are some people, some very, very top-tier players attending these tournaments, so even though there physically isn't a number that's that high in terms of the player base, the density of good players is quite high, so it does have some validity to it. Guatemala, an even smaller tournament, but it still does reflect the main story that's going on in this Ultra Prism to Sword and Shield format, and that's overall insane results for ADP Zacian. The archetype is doing very, very well right now. Obviously, tournaments have been cancelled up until May the 14th, I believe. So we're only going to have these sorts of results to look at in terms of getting some practice in, playing some PTCGO, having fun with the game right now. But I still thought it was interesting because obviously Henry's got a crazy list and there are some other things to discuss as well. And, you know, we have to be quite reflective at this point where we didn't really get to see this format develop much, but we could maybe speculate as to these tournament results, what they meant for the game, and what other decks could do to adapt to try and keep up with these archetypes, because it's purely speculation at this point. It seems to be moot. There will be new sets coming out before we have our next tournament probably, so yeah, but still is interesting and is fun, and I want to keep doing uploads in spite of the situation right now going on in the world, because you know, it's still the hobby that we want, and everyone's working from home now, so everyone wants some entertainment in their day, which I can understand fully, because I too am quite bored. Anyways, let's jump into the top 8. We'll start with Henry's winning 60, and he is playing a very interesting list of Mewtwo. Obviously, Henry is our current world champion. He won with a Perfection Mewtwo list that was using Welder. This list does not play Welder. It also doesn't play Malamar for energy acceleration, so it's relying on having some more efficient energy costing attackers, as well as the option to Soul Burst GX in the list. So that can create a huge amount of energy flooding into the field at once. The Soul Burst GX attack allowing you to attach up to 5 energy from your deck to your Pokemon in any way that you like for just the 1 metal cost. So oftentimes, if you are the player going second, Soul Burst can be an incredible option for you if you expect your Mewtwo to tank hits or just to set up attackers for like the rest of your game plan, basically. Because not only can you get things like weak guards to protect your Mewtwo, you can also go ahead and grab a bunch of rainbows and Aurora energies to power up not only the active, but also some bench threats as well, which is very, very interesting. So that's one of the main GX attacks that you have available to you. There's also the Sunsteel Strike attack that can do 230. We know that's a good number. You do have to discard all the energy attached to your Solgaleo, but in this deck you actually do have some 0 energy attack cost attackers that you can copy. So it's not always the worst thing in the world, especially because it can help you get over things like Zacian and other like basic GXs, which is definitely worthwhile noting. There is also one copy of the ADP Tag Team GX. Obviously, you know how good this is in the Zacian decks for trying to give yourself a nice damage buff, as well as taking additional prizes on scoring knockouts. But this deck actually goes for Alter Creation in a lot of situations. Naturally, you'll be trying to use this against the Mill archetypes, and Obstagoon, it is fairly obvious as well, because you have Greninja GX to attack with, so the Greninja GX obviously shreds, gets through the effect of Obstruct, and with the damage modifier of Alter Creation, you hit 160. So your Goons and your Mill are going to be pretty good, especially because against Mill you can use your 0 energy attacker in Alolan Raticate, and you have Great Gust from Snivysaur. So the ADP GX attack, great for those two matchups. But also, when you're the player going first, it can certainly be good enough anyways, because we have some great cheap attackers in here. You can go from turn 2 Alter Creation GX for the full value, because we are playing units, rainbows, and auroras, so you're opening 2 manual attachments, just like an ADP deck would do. Goes onto your Mewtwo, and then that third energy attachment can lead into things like Flygon's GX attack, or Flygon GX's regular attack, I should say, or a handful of other things. Again, things like Sunsteel Strike, all these sorts of options are available as sort of mid to late game attack options. So you certainly can cash in on the Alter Creation GX in many situations as well. I've seen a lot of people say this is like combo Soul Burst or Bust, but with the energy efficiency that Henry's got in his list, you can get away with Alter Creationing in a decent number of matchups, especially I think if you're the player going first. And when you have 8 Ball Search outs to Dedenne to get yourself a decent hand going, even without use of a supporter turn 1, I think it's very valid to actually choose to go first with this deck a lot of the time. Certain matchups you may not, but a lot of the time this Alter Creation GX is really important. Yes, we only play the 1 copy, but you have so much more search for this card because you have the tag calls naturally, and Solgaleo GX can't be searched via Quick Ball either, so physically finding this copy is more important. That's why there's a double up, whereas the ADP is equally important, just way more accessible. There's, interestingly, a great interview that the Sableyes YouTube channel did with Henry. I think Mitch and Jordan were on there as well, talking about the list and all the inclusions. Really is worth a listen if you are interested in picking up this deck yourself, because it's extremely versatile, but Henry goes through his sort of selection process of this binder drop of GXs because they all fit specific roles and are flexible at the same time. Next up, there's a Snivysaur. It's for gusting stuff, obviously. Great against the mill decks and anything that's going to play dolls. And in general, you can pick off some nice one-prize Pokemon quite easily. Even for 0 energy with a Alolan Raticate. If you're using the Alter Creation GX, this chuck away attack, it does 40 times the amount of cards you discard from your hand up to 2. So that 110 baseline from the Mewtwo means you can knock out things like Jirachi for 2 prizes on a gust of a Snivysaur, which is pretty sick. It's also the reason why you see such a high switch count as well as the Air Balloon down here. Snivysaur is a 3 retreat cost, but when you manually attach to do the ability anyway, and then you have the Air Balloon, you can just pivot out anyways, which is pretty interesting. So yeah, Snivysaur, great for a couple specific matchups, but also just a great gust option in general, when you can see, unlike most other Mewtwo decks, we're not playing Naganadel, the Sniper, and we only play 1 great catcher and no customs or anything like that, so the deck does lean into the Snivysaur quite a bit. Vileplume is an efficient 2 energy attacker to do 180 or 210 post GX buff. You have the option of Outrage with this Reshizard, and also you have the option of Flare Strike, for example, if your Flygon is prized, or if you want to make sure that Swell stays in play. Flygon obviously discards Swell. The Flare Strike can still do decent numbers, and he's literally a fire attacker, so you can put him down and Big Charm him and be a real nuisance for Zacian players out there. Blastoise GX's Rocket Splash is a great finishing attack. Greninja to help you get through Obstagoon and Latios and stuff like that. Also being another 2 energy attacker similar to Vileplume with that damage modifier of Alter Creation. This can already knock out things like Dedenne, so something to bear in mind. The Flygon with the damage buff of ADP is doing 270. We know how good of a number that is for 3 energy attachments. We have Chuck Away, which is efficient for dealing with 1 prize Pokemon, great against Mill, so they can hammer you, but it doesn't really matter. It may force Mill in future to add Girafarig, but that comes with its own heap of headaches, because if we've used Alter Creation and they're forced to Girafarig, sometimes that 2 prizes is what they would be using for Oranguru. So I don't think that the Girafarig is actually that good against this, because you're already taking 2 prizes and cashing in every time you do get the attack in, so I think it's actually pretty okay. The Indeedee helps out at negating rainbow damage / shrine damage if people are going to try and combine that with Mimikyu. Also, it is a psychic attacker that can hit into Mewtwo as a 2-prizer, which is great for mirror match situations and other Mewtwo matchups. The Xerneas Prism can come in and swing on an ADP for weakness, which is hilarious. Also, it helps your energy management a little bit throughout the game if you've had to Soul Burst onto some strange targets, or if you're using things like Crisis Vine, you can then steal the energy to actually use to attack with, which is cool. Wob to slow down Pikarom, as well as the Swells in here to slow down Pikarom, so you're really making it hard for them to... They basically never like turn 1 Blitz-U going second, I would say, if you're able to establish some of these pieces. And it can even be difficult for them to turn 2 full Blitz-U without their modifier, without their like cheatsy doodles going on, which is pretty cool. It can force a Gust into the Wob and protect your Mewtwo as well, which is just excellent. And then the Galarian Zigzagoon comes in a lot of situations. It pushes all sorts of math. It helps the Flygon reach on things like ADP. It helps this Alolan Raticate reach on certain Pokemon that may have resistance here and there, which is interesting. He can just be useful in so many different spots because we have so many different attacks. Naturally, the Zigzagoon becomes a useful card in all sorts of situations that just randomly crop up and you're like, oh, I'm just a little bit off. No, there we go. That can really help me out, which is really cool. We see the Tag Call package. It's got all 3 of the important Tag Call supporters. Malolana still coming into this list is an interesting one for me. I think this is partly because you're not seeing any Stealthy Hood, so that you have extra protection against Mimikyu to an extent. Also, just because we are leaning into the Crisis Vine. Is it Crisis Vine? I think it's called Crisis Vine. It's either Crisis Vine or Shining Vine. That ability, because you're leaning into that, you want to have essentially a 5th switch sometimes just to pivot your own Pokemon, even if you're not getting the heal, which is cool. We got that huge amount of Ball Search. You got the one Great Catcher to help out if Snivysaur's prized, or if you just don't want to put him down, like against a fire matchup, or just have some extra just gusting in general. The Big Charm and the Swell coming in to try and punish the heavy shrine-based builds of ADP Zacian. Obviously, Tord won a regional that was playing no Vitality Band and just double Shrine in the list, so having a high Chaotic Swell count and Big Charm makes a whole heap of sense for Mewtwo. I was actually experimenting this exact package in my Welder-based Mewtwo recently, and playing Fiery Flints in the place of Giant Halves because it was obviously an exploitable thing that you could look for, and Henry's obviously done that after seeing Towards winning 60 with just the double Shrine as modifiers. You can seriously punish people. You stop them putting labs down, you stop them putting... So they can't labs and Vitality Band you, and they can't just like Shrine tick you down, which is just really, really excellent. And obviously you have Indeedee if they put the Shrine in early, which is, again, just great. So a very well thought out list overall. It is a headache to play because you need to plan out basically your entire game on like the opening turns. Like literally your first action of turn 1 can be completely decided on which direction you want to go. So this really is like a rabbit hole style deck, I feel. You don't have any comeback mechanics, no reset stamps, no Marnies, no Absol, nothing like that. So you really do have to try and get your plan A going and just stick to that plan, basically. It can be difficult to play at times. I can foresee a lot of people not enjoying this archetype, but then I can also see a bunch of other people seeing the amount of options this deck has available, thinking, yeah, I can beat almost anything in the format with this list because of the amount of options that we have. As long as I play correctly, we're going to do okay. So this new way of playing Mewtwo is certainly interesting and one to look into. From there, we're going to look at a lot of ADP Zacian lists. You can see that the remainder of the top 8, bar the Baby Blounds played here, are all Zacians. So Christian Hasbani got 2nd place. He is playing Spinners. He is also playing Coin Flip Catchers, as well as a Great Catcher, so plenty of Gust in his list. I think this is one great way you can try and manipulate the Mirror Match, just by being able to Gust specific targets. It's also got... Absol and double Marnie rather than Absol stamps. So a bit of defense here. It's proactively awkward for things like mirror matches. It's proactively annoying for Blacephalon, so I can certainly see this supporter line being kept. It's obviously something that Tord played. It's got the Cryogonal in here for some extra disruption, which is interesting when you have good access to it with Spinner. Not only like on the opening turns, but later on in the game as well. It's got itself a couple of big charms in addition to Shrine. It's a bit of a strange mismatch there, where you're trying to buff up your ADP, but at the same time you're shrining yourself down. So timing is going to be important for these sorts of cards, but I know that Big Charm can be helpful in Mirror Match and put pressure on the opponent to put Shrine down, which can then in turn help you if they've got their own ADP in play. So it makes timing a little bit more awkward with this sort of split, but I can certainly see the reason behind it. But yeah, very similar to the sort of Tord engine. Choosing not to play Acrobikes concerns me a little bit because you have a physically low support account, and you're only playing 3 Zacian, and you don't have the extra push potential that an Acrobike would give you. The trade-off is that you get to play coin flip catchers to try and have like high roll turns that are just absolutely insane. So interesting to see that Acrobikes came out the list. I think one of the reasons why Tord's deck was so good was because it played those Acrobikes in the first place, and it does offset the slightly lower support account, but Christian showing that you can still be consistent without them, relatively. Next up, we've got a list from Jordan playing double wait and see hammer, which is interesting. It looks like a lot of people basically said, yeah, I really like Tord's list, and then they just made their own changes. A lot of the time we're seeing people cutting the resource management Oranguru, which I don't really agree with, because I still think Mill is viable, and I also think Obstagoon is like viable, but I guess they're expecting so many mirrors that just saying wait and see hammer will win me more games than the one-off tech of the Oranguru, which is fair enough at the end of the day. But basically the rest of this is just towards 60. Again, only playing 3 Zacian, it's a real bugbear of mine. Just play 4. You draw 3 cards. It's insane. But yeah, it looks like a lot of people are making the cut to 3, which I don't agree with personally. Alright, what else are we looking at? Any more variation? Yeah, this one's playing Alolan Ninetales GX. So Alolan Ninetales GX can give you great access to custom catchers on key turns. So rather than playing coin flip catchers, you just give yourself better access to customs, which is very interesting. Also having a rainbow/fairy energy attacker means you can, again, get through whatchamacallums, Obstagoon quite easily. You even resist the Goon, so that's pretty cool. Mimikyu being a response attacker onto opposing ADPs is interesting. Not sure how strong that is overall, but it seems okay. Obviously saying no to Jirachi is really weird when you still need to play a high switch count and Air Balloon being subbed in over a skateboard, so I think your early game is slightly less consistent than the Jirachi build, obviously, especially when you're the player going first. It's way harder for you to actually access your physical ADP. You only have those 7 ball switch outs. I know only 7 outs doesn't sound like that bad, but it actually is bad when you can't Stellar Wish 5 cards deeper into your deck. But at the very least, it's playing the Zacian to try and offset that, to at least get some end of turn draw going. It's got some energy switch shenanigans going on here, which is also pretty cool, to try and make the most out of your early game attachments and not necessarily be forced into Ultimate Ray. You can then just like E-switch Saucer, get a Zacian like bursted out of nowhere that can surprise the opponent. So there's some surprise factor here. There's some reason to play this Alolan Ninetales. You get some type advantage going on your side. You get an extra GX attack if you really want to use that, but you probably always want to alter creation as well. But yeah, just a interesting alternative. I remember Evenhoff did an article based on the Alolan Ninetales being an option in the list, and ADP Zacian just proving that it can succeed in so many different ways, basically. We see another ADP Zacian list. This is also tons of Gust from Clifton Go. It looks like this is basically the same list as Christian's 60. Is this the exact same? I think it's the exact same, right? It looks like the same. Oh no, it plays a 4th Zacian, so there's a cut somewhere, but I don't know what it is. Can't remember. But yeah, it looks super similar to Christian's. And then we have the final list available in the top 8, which is also Coin Flip Gust. So, from the looks of things, Coin Flip Gust is winning mirrors, which is pretty interesting. This list is also choosing to drop Acrobikes. Dropping bikes for coin flips makes me a little bit nervous. But I do love the counts of 4 Jirachi, 4 Zacian as well, so I don't know. ADP Zacian is just so strong that you can't say no to any list, really. Alright, we have this 18 Master event in Guatemala. Thought I'd give it a quick mention, just because it's more ADP Zacian domination. And then another Mewtwo deck, this time a Mali Mewtwo list from Franco in the top 4. But yeah, you don't have to look into this too much. I don't imagine there was a huge amount of top quality players there. This looks like it was basically towards 60. So again, it's towards list minus Monkey plus Absol. I think that's the only change in this entire 60. And it looks like Jose Marrero also played that exact same list. So, and he was top 4. So yeah, good lists all around by the looks of things. Just saying Tor's list is good and sticking with it. That is also what we're seeing basically here. It's like Tor's list minus preference cards, basically. Here there's only 3 Doggos, and it's added in Absol, and it's also made space for a Mawile. It's also split the research and mining counts. I don't think I would ever do that personally, but that's an interesting direction for sure. But yeah, overall it's ADP Zacian, and the overall points from the Ultra Prism to Sword and Shield format really do show that. The amount of points Zacian has earned already is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. It's got almost 45% of the total points earned, just like across the board. That's absolutely insane. It is starting to get into that sort of echelon of being played about 30% in tournaments, maybe even higher in some of these latest ones, which is absolutely crazy. But it's awesome to see that Henry has brought a new sort of answer to the format. I think he boasted a pretty favourable win rate, both at the IC and in the Perth regionals against Zacian. So this wacky Mewtwo list may end up being the White Knight in the format right now. It would have been really interesting to see the direction of the format going forward, because potentially this Soul Burst list could be challenged by other Mewtwo variants, maybe something like the Welder Mewtwo variant coming back into the format somewhat. I also thought it was interesting to see like Baby Blacephalon's placement. It didn't do that well, but it did make a top 8 in Perth. And I think that also had some more development going forward as well, because we were seeing a nice variety of lists from the Malmo regionals. So I think those seem to be the more top contenders. Pika Rom doesn't really appreciate things like Swell and Wob going into Henry's list, but that's still a consistent archetype in general and can have the beating of a few other things. I think with the fear of Oranguru in ADP Zacian, it may have put people off playing Mill for this weekend. Both of these tournaments played on the same weekend, by the way. But with people making it like a flexible card, or people just choosing to cut it, possibly Mill could hang at the top as well. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this continuation of the format. What are you going to be playing online? And what other videos should I be recording? Obviously, I'll be doing some updated lists for a few videos this week, but I'm also expecting to have some different content out there as well, just to keep ourselves busy while we are no longer able to attend tournaments, which is completely the correct decision by Pokemon, might I add. But yeah, I'm glad to see they did make a move on that. Regardless, thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the little updates for the latest mini tournaments that we've had recently. And I hope you bought your Zacians, because they're going to continue to be good, even in the new format, I would imagine. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video tomorrow. Cheers.